So maybe I'll give a quick introduction for anyone who's watching the recording. Fabien Benetou has joined this community edition setup session to walk through the process of how he set up community edition on OVH. We announced that last week Fabien is one of our documentation awardees. And so he's one of the folks who has been helping out the community get more documentation on how to use Community Edition with other platforms. And Fabien, huge thanks, especially for how quickly you moved to get the tutorial out following the announcement about the hub shutdown. I know the community appreciates having documentation as quickly as possible so that we can help people start moving to their own self-hosted instances.
Well, yeah, thanks. I want to say it was my pleasure, but I admit it was a little bit of a surprise to have to rush through it. So, like we discussed a little bit, the two of us, I mentioned that the motivation is good regardless of the context. I wish it was not for sunset of hubs, basically, but just because I believe self-hosting is important. But yes, as I briefly mentioned in the documentation that I shared, it's even more important now. Like it's sadly, let's say, it pushes everyone now to, well, you must self-host. It's not just a nice to have, it's not an option, it's an actual requirement. We'll see eventually, I think, through different community effort, how that might still shape. I imagine that some people using the documentation made by me and others before me, and you also, will self-host, and eventually some, I imagine, will even make it a service, a paying service. So I want to highlight that still I do hope it remains an option, but I think it's an important option for a couple of reasons. I'll try to share my screen, and you will tell me also how best to orient it
Mhm.
so that it can be best
If it's
for the
okay with you,
recording.
I can just kind of put it next to your information. I love how you're set up in this information booth. But I'll just adjust your screen for you to make it nice and big, and then I'll also focus on it as I'm hopping between here. So in case you want to look at it, I'll kind of angle it too. Can you see it if we if you look to your right?
Yeah.
Cool.
Okay. Thanks. So yeah, actually, so I started to tinker with hubs a long while ago, and it wasn't for self-hosting; it's for prototyping. So I have a bunch of prototypes on hubs, and my motivation, even before using hubs, well, I do like a lot of the different Mozilla projects, starting with Firefox, but a lot of different ones, including IoT. Like I had a web things IoT box to, like, I'm going to turn on and off the light there in my home office, and that's done through IoT. And for a while, it was the Mozilla project that I use as a gateway. And hubs then happened a couple of years ago, and my goal for VR is to organize my notes. I have notes all around me, like post-it notes and notebooks and uh, wikis and whatnot. And so that's why I do VR in the first place. That what gets me going. Not everybody's into this. Some people are into gaming, so I'm into, obviously it would have something more social. But to me, honestly, it's getting more creative, basically. Some of it is social, some of it is not. And Hubs has had a lot of really cool components, like the one I hope I can share properly there, where I was able to open PDF, like research papers, uh, grab post-it note through a spawner, thanks to Spoke. So same, the whole room is set up through Spoke. And I was able then to take photo with a camera. I mean, everything that is not initially for that usage, but I was still able to do it. And we were two in the room, me and a friend or an acquaintance, and we were able to collaborate, work together on this. But I think hubs is not enough. And so I made a bunch of different prototypes, like I was saying before, the web things for Mozilla and hubs for IoT. Um, the camera avatar that I'm using now, I think I was one of the first to do one poorly done, but that worked before it was an official
Hmm.
avatar. My notes with sketches, I mean, bunch of things. So it means I was very excited by self-hosting, not just for the moral or ethical or privacy aspect of it, but also because I think hubs is not enough. You need hubs plus other components, other customization, etc. And if you can host it, then you can say hubs should be this way or should be that way. And of course, we don't have all the same needs. So some people absolutely don't care about this, and maybe most don't. So I don't think it really makes sense to bring it back to hubs core, let's say. But if you can still do whatever crazy things you want, I think it's quite valuable as a tool to think and as a, also as a social tool because not every community has the same needs, which is also um, the issue. So I'll actually start for people that might be a bit confused there with the screen sharing. The starting points or the starting single one would be the Hubs Cloud GitHub, and then Community Edition, and then all the documents already written. And the one I know best, obviously, is mine that was published last week or something like this. Um, and I list some of my motivation there, and one is well, GDPR for A-frame, which Hubs is partly based on until now and changing. And here the specific issue on, like you can see a little while ago, couple of years ago, because Hubs was initially only hosted on AWS, well, just on whatever Hubs was, and then AWS. Uh, and I don't like Amazon. I think in terms of centralizing the internet, it's not a healthy thing. So I would argue that for Mozilla's mission, it's it's not good enough, basically. So when Michael, we had a discussion about hosting on another platform, like OVH or Hetzner's or something based in Europe due to GDPR, so privacy compliance, basically. I was pretty excited, but I admit I was a little bit afraid because it's running on Kubernetes and I don't know Kubernetes. Um, so I want to start, let's say, this session by saying if you don't know Kubernetes, you can still make it. Uh, it's still feasible. And I even have a proof now, just in case this session doesn't go as expected. An hour ago, I started a new instance called hubs.ovh, and it works. You can see it running there, I hope. Um, and I was able to log in with my admin email, and I can add the scenes, etc. I mean, it's a working with the what's the name, with the certificates running valid. So it's a proper Hubs instance. It's a minimalist one because I needn't add any content, but it works. And again, for somebody who was rather convinced a couple of weeks ago that learning Kubernetes was just too overwhelming. So, like, I want this. If it's the only takeaway, if you connect now and you disconnect in 5 minutes or even like in 1 minute, yes, Kubernetes is complex, and I don't pretend to be an expert in Kubernetes. But I just want to say, don't assume that because you don't know Kubernetes, you can't deploy hubs on OVH or another provider. It is feasible. If you do follow the steps and you're lucky, no problem. If you don't, then maybe you'll have to backtrack a bit and check the logs. But overall, it's definitely feasible.
Hmm. And Fabien, you
Yeah.
didn't have Kubernetes experience before this. As you were iterating, how many times do you think you've kind of been setting up instances like the one you set up before this session to begin to feel more comfortable.
Yes. Yes, and I think one of maybe an advice to feel comfortable there is don't assume the first instance of hubs is going to work.
Hmm.
So if you need to deliver an instance tomorrow because there is an event, yeah, maybe it's too late.
Sure.
But if it's in 1 week or couple of days and you have, let's say, the time to fail, then I'm rather confident that through my documentation, through the documentation written by others, through browsing through the logs, the error logs, it's definitely feasible in couple of hours. And if you're used to it, again, after setting it up maybe 5 times, then it becomes rather trivial, again, without prior Kubernetes experience.
Great. Thank you for answering that.
And I saw also a question in the chat. I'll try to keep an eye on it with the noise or the sound rather. This one is not, is it? I don't think it's connected to a custom client, but I've done that before, and I believe if I go in my tutorial, so I'll briefly show the tutorial actually. The first part is what I said so far, basically why I believe it matters, that I think Hubs is a great project, regardless of the sunset, but that self-hosting it in terms of privacy is important. Instead of customization is fundamental, and now it is actually rather urgent. The second step is the technical detail. Let's say if you're a DevOps sysadmin or a developer and you don't really care about the why, just go on the how. There is a long video, 1 hour or 55 minutes, where I go through a bit more detail. That's the end. You should get that after an hour, more or less. So like I said, if it's the first time, maybe you go through it, it maybe takes a day, but shouldn't take much longer. And then the big steps, which I'm going to show, bit more detail, even more detail with a command line basically to use, the certification, how to get HTTPS working, bit more screenshots if you're not used to OVH, mostly on how to create a Kubernetes cluster, which I'm going to demonstrate in a few minutes. Detail on how to do the comment when the cluster is up. And all this to say for Ivan on the chat for your question, I do have the last section basically on how to set up a custom client. I will answer your question right away now. Basically, it boils down to, I think it's if you search there
Stable
on
latest or
reality, you
yeah,
have a
Mozilla reality.
hubs. Voilà. This line basically is the hubs client, and I suggest to always like duplicate the line and comment it so that if you have a problem, you can roll back. And if I put my Docker contain registry name and CE for Community Edition, it's going to load it. Okay, I think that's the only thing I need. So I'm going to be naive enough and even try to do this. I'm going to
Live
save
demo.
it. Say what?
I was just saying live demo. I'm excited.
Yes, well, it's okay. It's probably not going to work. And again, I'm silly enough to try, but let's give it a go. So I modified, I'm skipping steps for the question, but don't worry. Again, if you don't know Kubernetes, I'm going to unpack that a bit more. But I basically changed the Hubs client um, image from the official one to mine. And if I go on the Docker Hub, where I have my image, actually this one is probably wrong. Need to log in. Yeah, this is a former one. My repositories. I imagine it's this one. So yeah, I have a hub CE with an image I built a little while ago, 11 days ago. And now if I check, it's not getting it. So I'll check. I think it's not private. Yeah. What I can do is making sure it's.
Could it be that you don't have the stable latest tag? You only have the latest tag?
So I can barely hear you. When you were a bit closer, I could hear you better.
Sorry, I'm maybe too far away and not speaking clearly. Um, I could it be that you don't have the stable latest tag in your registry? You only, but you specified it in the YAML file.
Ah, you're right. You're right. Yes, yes, indeed. It was latest and before. So, yes, exactly. So it has to be precise.
Yeah.
So here, my registry name, this specific image, and then indeed the tag. And yes, the image pull back off is basically usually that it cannot get the right container or the right image rather. So I
And
modified again, saved it, applied again, and impatiently I'm going to reload for 50 times. And this one, still not. What did I do this time? Latest, no typo. Oh yes, it's not. It's my nickname instead of my name. So it's it's of course all those mistakes are done on purpose to illustrate the problems you're going to have in the future. So this is all going according to plan. Yes, container creating. I also probably will have a problem this one that's still running, so I might have to delete them all. But let's cross fingers because I'm a little bit just in interest of time. So I'm reloading. Then I might also have to do a hard reload, and I don't remember actually what I changed on that one, but that would basically be the process that instead of using the image here that is the official one, I switch to mine. And yes, what I was saying is I don't remember what I modified on this. I think I basically changed the title and developer tools. Maybe I think in the console. I think I did. Okay, so I'm going to have to delete them all. Maybe I did a console log or I know, voila, here. Okay, cool. So it wasn't for nothing. So here, the live demo. So you have Utopia's Hub CE, completely useless comment, but it's a proof, let's say, that it is my own version of Hub's Community Edition with my own version of Hub's front end, basically, which, to be honest, is super important to me, again, as a prototypist, because doesn't matter how much I like hubs, I always want to do something a little bit crazier on top. So here, this single little line, this single useless comment to me is very important because it means it's generally my version of hubs. It's also important, I think it's a good illustration. That's why I took the time now to do this, is because these mechanisms, changing the image from the official one to yours, is basically the steps you need to decouple from the official images, which
Mhm.
again, sadly, due to the sunset, is the one process that we must go through. You can have your own versions. You can have someone else also, as long as again it's public, a public image. Then you can use. You can even use mine. I don't think it's a good idea because it's super basic. But yeah.
And Fabian, I will just kind of remind for anyone who's watching the video for the first time, um, absolutely the best way to kind of ensure that Hubs is yours moving forward is every mention of a Mozilla Reality Docker registry should be replaced with your own if you want to fully decouple. That being said, we
Yeah.
are still working to define like, will there be trusted community images that will pull from by default, or will Mozilla be able to turn over some of those? So that's in the works, but absolutely, if you want to fully decouple, you should create your own versions of all of them. Uh, but hopefully, people should follow along in our Discord if they want to see if there will be community ones or ones that Mozilla is able to pass off to the community.
Yeah. Now I'm going to go back a little bit for the OVH part. I mean, I hope that I've proven that my own custom instance first works and then secondly is truly mine, and that also deploying a custom client, what as long as you do put the proper image with your registry and name and tag, works. But then some people might not be familiar with OVH, especially if you're not from Europe, especially if you're not French, to be honest. It's a cloud provider from France. So I also want to highlight from the start that I don't necessarily think it's the best cloud provider ever. But what I want to say is it works. It works. I've been using it for 10 plus years. Um, I had a fire, like a literal fire in the data center. So yeah, shit
Wow.
happens. People, you must have backups, even yeah, even on the data center that you don't control. So back up your data. Um, but still, I keep on using. It happened only once, just to clarify. Um, but they provide all the redundancy you might need, including on different data centers, and they grow. Yeah, one can be enough, but you must take it as a reminder to always do your backups. Um, why did I use it? Beside me using it, is that they do. I'm going to show you my own account, and I'm going to start basically the process from scratch, which it won't last in the 30 minutes I guess we have left. But you've seen the end, you've seen the custom client, so if you don't see it a second time, I think it's okay for everyone.
Yeah. And Fabian,
What
we
they
do.
do is,
I'm planning
yeah,
to stay for the next hour and a half, but I know you might need to run out before that. But so don't worry if we don't cover something. I'll be staying on for an hour past kind of the top of the hour.
yeah. And again, if there is any let's even imagine that somehow my own fire is in my place right now and I must go. Let's hope not. But the documentation is here, and I tend to be quite available on Discord. So yeah, don't hesitate. If I also miss a question there on the chat, um, please do ask on Discord publicly. Also, don't send a DM unless there is like something super private. Simply because others can maybe help you even better than I am. Maybe there's even somebody working at OVH in the Discord chat. You never know, and maybe they're going to say, "Whoa, whatever he said, we can do much better." So yeah, if I miss anything, please do ask on Discord. Now I see a question about cost. So basically, it's cheap. Uh, I think basically if you do have a cluster with 3 machines, the domain, the cheapest one I could was actually a .ovh, which I think is like a couple of euros per year. So I want to say €5 per year or less. And then in terms of the cluster with 3 machines, I think it's €40 per month. Of course, it depends if you want to add more machines, bigger machines, if you want to have a managed database, etc. But for a full month, with you should pay less than €50, basically. It's not for a huge machine with thousands of users. I'm doing prototyping, so everything related to scalability. I'm not the person to ask. Basically, I mean, you can still ask, but my answer will not necessarily be relevant If you want, also at the end, we can do a little test on the machine, all join it and see how much it holds. Um, but yeah, so and the price I'm going to show you now actually. But the main benefit of OVH, beside being Europe, and I think the price is relatively good, to be honest, I think it's quite competitive, is this button, create a Kubernetes cluster, which, to be honest, if there wasn't one, starting from scratch for Kubernetes, I think it's tricky. But because what they do is called manage Kubernetes, then you can have this button, like the create a Kubernetes cluster. So I'm going to set it. I have the one already running now, and I'm going to create another. So let's say that's the most important part in the sense that it's OVH specific. Once you've done that part, and for example, if you believe my tutorial is not clear for whatever reason, then you go back to Community Edition and you find another one based also on Kubernetes, obviously, maybe with even other tools that you prefer, like Terraform or whatever you want, really, and then go there. Because it's basically the first step that's the biggest difference, namely the managed Kubernetes part. So I'm going to choose a location, one that is basically close to me or future users. This one I've used before, so it means it's active, so it's going to be faster in terms of setup. I choose the recommended version because, again, I'm not a Kubernetes expert, so I don't see why I would have a good reason to go backward. Public IP, because it's going to face users. And now in terms of price, I go back to the question asked a couple of minutes ago. That's basically what's going to make the difference. If you want a big machine, like 400 gigabit of SSD, 120 gigabit of RAM, 10 gigabit per second, 400 euros per month. That's not what I'm going to use. I don't think it's needed for test and prototyping, but it shows also a bit what's available. What I'm going to use, especially for if you're discovering both Hubs Community Edition and Kubernetes, also is Discovery and the cheapest machine, which here goes to 11 euros per month. How many of them? So I just leave the default to 3. I don't do auto scaling. If you have an unlimited credit card and you know what you're doing, try that. But otherwise, I recommend that if it crashes, at least it doesn't crash your credit card. Billing, so could be, so it's 3 times 11, 3 nodes on that pod for 11, so that's 33 euros. But here
How
I'm
do
going
you
to
see,
try, and probably tomorrow morning I'm going to stop it.
Fabien, how were you able to see the 11 nodes or kind of scope that out?
So here, if I go back on step 4, I choose the type of nodes, or the type of node basically. I
Uh-huh.
take the cheapest for prototyping. If it crashes, I give up. And here, I think I don't have any problem with the smaller one. So 4 gigabit of RAM, 2 cores, 50 gigabits of hard disk.
Hmm.
So that was okay. And here, that's the price, 11 euro per month.
Oh, sorry, that's the price per month. That's not 11 pods per node.
No, no,
Gotcha, gotcha. Sorry, I thought that's what you were saying.
no. So I have one pod per cluster. And in that pod, the node pool size, so the number of machines basically, is 3. And that number is the default one. I don't know. It runs on 3. It might even run on 1 because if you use Hubs Compose, for example, it works. But I did not try it in that context. And obviously, it runs on more than 3. But then, is it
Hmm.
worth it? Because if you don't know, the scale of your audience, how many people are going to join, I don't think there is a need for it. Uh, Anyway, if you choose hourly billing. If it doesn't work, you just delete your cluster, start another one, or even delete the pool, start a new one with bigger or smaller nodes, more of them, less of them. Yeah, you don't really care so much because it's going to cost you like a couple of euros at most, basically. Does it make sense?
Gotcha. Yes, thank you for that.
Cool. Then I'm going to name it. So hubs meetup, and it has to be a unique name because you're going to then reference it later when you get the kubeconfig file. So again, if you're not familiar with Kubernetes, so I can get the detail there. It's still installing. It's going to take about 10 minutes, which also will allow me to answer a bit more questions there. And after those 10 minutes, so you can see also basically it started a node pool, so a series of a group of machines that connects to your cluster, your Kubernetes cluster, with the configuration I picked. So 2 CPU, 4 GB of RAM, 50 of hard disk, 3 nodes. Anti-affinity basically is like I don't really care if they are next to each other. Like I mentioned the fire before, that would be a bad idea in that case. In terms of prototyping and testing, you don't care. You basically even probably prefer them to be next to each other. Auto scaling, like I said, don't want to blow up the credit card. Monthly rate, I don't care because it's the hourly rate, and then it's installing.
While that's going, would you be willing to walk me through? I'm gonna try and create my own instance as well, but I can share my screen. Put that behind Imaginer. Um, but just to kind of review, going through it again, I'll create a
Yeah.
Kubernetes cluster. What version did you recommend? The latest?
Yes. Yes.
Public IP. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, none public IP. Yeah. And then smallest instance size is what I'm going for. Looks like for me that's about 29 per
No.
month.
So go back.
I picked the wrong thing.
So
Sorry.
here, if you go back on the type, yeah, you can choose discovery. And discovery is exactly for this kind of usage where
Ah,
you're like, oh, I'm learning Kubernetes or I'm discovering OVH. I don't have an unlimited budget. So that's what I would recommend in our case for testing.
gotcha. Just looking at the costs here, it looks like the lowest on general purpose is like 29, lowest on computer optimized is 42, memory optimized is about 42. GPU is definitely the most expensive, and then Discovery is the least.
Some of them, like GPU, you probably also need some like a month of validation, a couple of weeks, or there might be some limits there because it's like such. But I don't think here it's useful anyway.
Should I do two or three? Should I try and do a smaller number of nodes?
Sure, sure.
I just want to see if it will work. I think I'm not. I'll probably delete this as well. Um, and did you say monthly tends to be cheaper, right?
So it's probably cheaper, except that you're going to have it for a month. So if you want to close the cluster tomorrow morning,
Good call there.
hourly is probably what you want.
Yeah. So no anti-affinity.
No need for it.
Yeah. Let's see. So I'm going to be a bit behind you, and I know yours is already creating, but let's see how it goes.
You might get faster, like maybe the nodes in your region are
It's true. Yeah.
more available. So it's hard to predict. Which is also why, so it's another advice I want to give to people that are discovering Kubernetes or are discovering Hub's Community Edition. If you are in rush, the chances that you'll do a mistake are much higher. It's like, when you need to print a document urgently, that's always when the printer somehow doesn't work properly. And for example, here now, like I'm clicking refresh on the node pools again and again and again. There is probably no need for it. So if you can like get half a day to do a proper setup without being pressed by time,
Yeah.
the amount of mistake you're going to do is going to be much lower.
I learned that in in art school, but the a sentiment was basically the same of if you don't have enough time, you should probably slow down to minimize mistakes.
Mhm. Exactly. So yeah, what we're waiting for here now that the nodes are starting is the kubectl file. So if you're not familiar with it, it's let me go there. I think I have the one that I'm using at the moment. I normally shouldn't do this. Show you my kubectl file because in it you have some basically authentication data. So if somebody were to screen capture now and then OCR the video, you should probably be able to connect there to the server that is going to manage the node pool and do
Hmm.
whatever you want with it. I'm going to destroy it all after, so I
Great.
don't really care.
I will as well. But that's
Yeah.
cool how they give you your kube config. I guess maybe they don't have a command line interface, but they just give you your kube config scoped to your project. That's cool.
uh, and and you can, I mean, relatively. So now I have it. You see, it's still installing. Normally, I would be waiting and chill, etc. Now, because we're a little bit pressed for time, I'm still going to get it. So I'm downloading it. I'm going to now. If I get the pods, so if I look at what I have, actually, yeah, it's on. Actually, here it's interesting. You see, it doesn't connect. It doesn't work. It's because I'm on another terminal. Now, if I get the pods here, I have everything running. So it's because I'm connected to the previous cluster, which has this instance running. So what I must do now is make that kubectl available. So I'm going to do export kubectl. So you have different ways to do it, but I find this one
Hmm.
the best because then you can juggle between different kubectl and thus between different clusters. So now I don't have any resource, which is normal. I actually don't even have, I guess, still any nodes on which to deploy anything yet. But it's fine because then the next step, and again, now I would argue from that point, if you're familiar with Kubernetes, you have your kubeconfig file. You can, you can repeat the steps you would see in another documentation. So I want to argue, let's say, if you're not familiar with OVH, the hardest part is done. Now, if you're not familiar with Kubernetes, I think it's still worth to hang on a little bit. And what you'll have to do, I don't want to skip steps, is to clone the Hubs Cloud repository. Need to check the chat. No worries. So I'm going to go in my prototypes folder, Hubs CE meetup. I'm going to clone it. So you must have Git installed. Then I'm going to go in the community edition directory, which is pretty empty, but it has everything we need. Specifically, the render file which you must then configure with your domain, your email address, and then your SMTP, so your email basically data. So I'm going to do that now. I think for the domain, I have this one available. I need to double check. And I don't think I have anything on it. Yeah, nothing loads, so it's a good sign. And yes, and I put some empty IP address for test, basically. My email address. And then for SMTP, so I use Elastic email because I'm copying what others on the Discord server have used, and it seems to work well. And it's also free of charge if you don't like go above a certain threshold. So I can recommend it. SMTP port, me as a user, and then the password. I hope it's not going to make me change it. Yeah, so it's going to make me change it, which well, actually I guess is fine. The other, I'm not going to log in again on the other server. Same this, I'm going to change it after the presentation, but overall, that's the kind of secret you would not share with anyone.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'm going to execute that script. So now it generated a new file called he.yaml, and in it you have everything to basically populate your cluster. So you can double check you have your right domain, the SMTP data, your email address. Here there are things to change which I don't have, so not going to change those. And Sketchfab and Tenor, same, I don't have. And normally now the nodes should have been deployed, I hope. Oh no, so I just have one out of three. Yeah. Sorry, were you saying something?
I was just commenting that I saw one of them had been spun up.
Yeah. It's a bit random. Voilà. Okay. Just refresh and
There
it
we
works.
go.
And now what I'm going to do is apply this YAML file with, again, all the services are in it. So I showed a bit the configuration that is all there, which is what you want. But then you have, I was showing before, so that was Reticulum, Postgres, PG Bouncer to dispatch them to Postgres, the client, and I think Hub Proxy, Spoke, voilà, all the services. And I'm going to...
Fabien,
Yeah.
real quick, sorry to make you backtrack. Can you go through once more? I don't think I captured it on my screen capture, how you got the kubeconfig context set up correctly with OVH?
So I go back to the cluster, and here I download the file.
Gotcha.
I'm going to do it again.
I don't know why, but on mine, I'm not seeing the button available.
So it's probably still too early for you.
Oh, I just need to wait. Okay, gotcha.
Yes. You see here, I shouldn't do this, but I'm a little bit silly and naive. So it's a live demo, and I do it anyway. It still stays status installing. It should be status
Yes.
OK. And I imagine in your case, because you started just a bit later, it's still loading.
Now I've got status OK, and I can click and download the kubeconfig file. So I've got the YAML in my downloads folder. So now I can, is it just exporting it?
Yes. So you got the kubeconfig file, right?
Yes, I've got the kubeconfig file.
So yeah, here this is what I usually use. I'm going to zoom a little bit more if it helps. But like export kubectconfig and then the path to the YAML
Hmm.
file that you got. And normally, if you,
Yep.
so I'm going to zoom out just a bit. If you get your pods, then you get nothing.
Hmm.
The honestly, when you start with Kubernetes, all those names, pods, pool, services, cluster, it's a little bit like it doesn't mean anything, and it's basically, or the way at least I understand it, it's different ways to organize resources. So your cluster has pools, and then your pools have basically servers or pods in it, and then you have your services that you dispatch to this pool of servers, basically.
Hmm.
Uh, Again, I think when you start, don't learn any of those words. Follow the step, and then as you do it a couple of times, it's going to make more sense. We're going to like change, for example, the namespace. Initially, you don't even know what the namespace is or mean. I recommend not like learning the words themselves without actually the action of doing a deployment. I don't think it's that efficient.
Hmm.
So I should now apply it. Also because that take a couple of minutes, or so I should have done this before talking. But now that the servers are ready, then I'm going to create all the services, or rather, I'm going to ask them to be created. I don't do anything. And then if I start to get the pods again, which actually maybe they were in the other.
Did you create a namespace for this?
I'm wondering. Because I did, or maybe I called it something else here. Yes.
For anyone who's watching on my screen, I've skipped over the part of filling in. I'm using a HCCE YAML file from a previous tutorial, so I've skipped over the part of filling out render hcce.sh and running that command. I'm just using an older one from another demo. So just
That's what I,
giving context.
yeah, that's what I did not want to do because I thought that's safer, of course. But it means in terms of showing people, I think it's an important step basically. And
Hmm.
to give also a bit more context, I didn't have any pods before because I was in the wrong namespace, namely hub CE. But if I go in the config file, I see the namespace that I declared is the normal one, let's say the one that's declared in the config. I don't, I think if you have, I don't see a reason to change it basically. So I changed
Yeah.
it before in the past. Now I don't see why it would be done. And now everything should be running. It's not going to work, namely that I don't even know where to connect because I did not bind the domain to the IP address. So what I can do is go back to my tutorial, and there is a line basically after you applied it and you wait. I give a rough estimation of the time, but just an estimation. You can get your public IP address through the service of the load balancer, and you need to use the right namespace. And I have my IP address. I can copy it, go back to the domain, change it. So there are 4 places when you need to change it. Basically everywhere. The assets, course, and Steam A records. And then you can apply it. Exactly the same problem as before, that it's going to take a couple of minutes to be applied. If you're impatient, you're going to have some cache in the way. It's going to work and not work and then work again. I suggest, like in most of the steps there, go grab a coffee, open a tutorial on I don't know how to install something else, but basically be patient. And I'm going to do the opposite. So now I'm on my matrix.ovh. Yeah, I still got the old IP address there. It's going to take a little bit of time to refresh. I can also try on another client because I think I use another DNS for Chromium. Yeah, and now I think it's okay. But just on this specific one. Once you'll have, so I'm going to show back.
And for anyone who's watching my screen, I'm still updating my DNS records.
So now the record is actually, and I made a mistake. I think I need to update also this one, the let's say base one. So change text format. Yes, this one also must be changed by the IP address. And you can also see, actually, I'm going to use the little pause moment. I also have the elastic email here. It's basically to prove that this domain is a valid elastic email sender that I really own, let's say mymatrix.ovh, which is important because we're going to need the email address in order to be able to log in. So don't forget that step. If you use Elastic Email, if you use another provider, they might verify through another process. But that's pretty typical to have your domain, your zone file to be modified, to have different ways to prove that, yeah, you're in control basically of that domain. So, okay. I think, yes, so now I can connect. I don't see anything, but I can see also, I guess, if I, have a slower DNS update on my command line. But as you can see, I'm connected on this one on Chrome, or Chromium rather. So what I'm going to do now, so it works. If I check in the console, some of the other domains don't show, like assets and all this, because of the lack of certificates. So I'm going to then get the certificates, and there is a script for this too, which I need to update with my domain.
This is cbb.sh, correct?
Yes. So again, if at some point it goes too fast or whatnot, I want to argue, don't worry too much about it, because there is the, like here, for example, I list the different records for the domain, and then for the certificate, cbb.sh is there, and everything there is, let's say, I hope at least step-by-step clarified. And if it's not, please, again, do mention it on Discord, and I would happily update it. So I put the same namespace. Again, can be potato if you want, as long as it's coherent. Here I didn't change it, even easier. My email address and then the domain. And then I can execute it. And what it's going to do is going to deploy a new pod called CertBot, which is basically an adapted version of CertBot. So it's what's the name? It's a Let's Encrypt certification solution that's going to check that you really own that domain and those subdomains or whatever basically you want to get a certificate for. I recommend same because maybe here there are some domain lag or a bit of latency, maybe on the OVH server where I installed everything, where they're doing the query for Let's Encrypt. Maybe it need a couple more minutes. This is only done in rush for the video, but otherwise you would still be having your coffee, for example. You come back 10, 15 minutes later. If you do now, as I'm doing, and maybe it doesn't work because there is cache or there was some delay, it doesn't really matter so much. You can run it a second time. It's going to end up working. If it still doesn't work somehow, though, then as I mentioned a bit before, but the most important command then will be kubecontrol, control, the namespace, and then logs, and then whatever pod you assume is going to be problematic, or maybe you even have, like in the status, some kind of issue. You see here there is 2 out of 2, maybe it's 1 out of 2, 0 out of 1. If you see basically something suspicious, you can look through the logs. Here it seems to be doing okay. I think it passed the first one, so normally it should be fine. And the goal then will be to get the certificate and then be able to refresh and hopefully not get the HTTPS error. I don't know if there is any question then in the meantime. So
Trying to talk, but my microphone was off. I'm in an interesting spot. I don't know if it is a problem or something else. Um, and apologies for the background noise here. I was able to have my domain records propagate, and I can check that by running ns lookup and then seeing devmoran.com come back with my updated IP address. However, I'm not able to self-sign my certificates. I have to, if I go to devmoran.com, it just doesn't connect. Have you experienced something like this? I guess when you
so
connected before running certbot, were you able to self-sign your certificates, or was it just a white screen?
it was the white screen saying that there was just self-signed certificate, but it's the one provided with the initial apply. So normally
Yeah,
it
yeah.
should still be able to connect. But I think once you start the process of certification through certbot bot, then I think it basically takes over, and I don't think you can connect
You know,
anymore.
I just realized what the issue was. It was when I was copying and pasting my HCCE YAML, I forgot to grab the all the keys that are generated um, when you run render hcce.sh. So I'm actually just going to grab those and then reapply. So
In the meantime, here it finished, so that looks pretty good. And then the one step again, it's in the documentation file. Is you need to edit again the YAML file, the hcce.yaml, and comment the certificate. Basically, the default SSL certificate. So if I edit it. And then I look for certificate. I see it. I comment it. I really don't recommend deleting lines because otherwise you don't remember what you've modified. I save it. And then I apply it again. Most of it isn't changed. So you don't see a new pod or rather a service changed. But some of it, specifically the hap proxy one, has changed, and if you try to get your pods, it should replace it. So it terminating one, and then there is another one running. Overall, my experience has been that it's not enough. Usually, maybe there is something hanging. Maybe again, it's the lack of patience. But overall, once it's properly terminated, so we are not going to see it anymore, I recommend to just delete all the pods. It's going to delete all your data, but you don't have any data yet. So that should not be a problem. I also don't touch on this during the uh, in the documentation. Sorry. So I don't touch on how to save files during the documentation. I think it's the proper way basically would be with the Kubernetes volumes that OVH does provide. Namely, if I go here back to my OVH control panel, you can add. I mean, you don't ever need it there. You can basically change your configuration here and store a volume and then attach it. I did not manage, so I'm not going to document something that I don't master properly, let's say. But it's definitely feasible. The dirtier way, which as a prototype is what I would do, is uh, going into the container itself, like do a database dump, save whatever you can, however you can't, basically. And then eventually SCP back, so copy the files on that server again. It is not clean in the sense that it doesn't scale, it's not automated, blah, blah, blah. But again, it doesn't matter in the sense that you must have something. You must have a way to save your data, even if it's manually for a week. And then in another week, when either you figure it out and you publish it somewhere on Discord or online on GitHub or wherever you want, or if I find a way. But until then, if it's done manually, again, I think it's very much a process. So now I'm going to delete all my pods. I don't want to delete the actual thing. I'm too lazy to type the whole thing, so I'm going to rely on my trusted documentation, copy it, change the namespace. So it says deleted, so don't worry about it. The first time it might be a little bit scary, but it just means it's going to restore them. So, and again, you don't have data there to actually lose. So, and that is relatively fast. It's going to take a couple of minutes at most. The too long step, again, if you want to compact all this as quickly as you can, is getting the cluster. It takes about 10 minutes. The first apply to get the service is relatively fast, but then it's getting the IP address in your domain. That's going to be another 5-10 minutes. It depends. But it means overall, once you've done it a couple of times, you should be done in less than half an hour. I don't know if there is any question in the meantime while it's redeploying
Wonderful.
everything.
I'm just trying to go through the process again and see if I can follow along with the. I'm still before running the certbot bot script, but so I'm a little bit behind. But
I mean, I'm already happily surprised that you were able to store the cluster and start to do things with the cluster right away. Well, I don't believe you were particularly familiar with OVH, so that's pretty nice.
yeah, the interface, and I quite like how the kubectl or the kube config comes scoped to your project. That's a lot. I find that when I'm setting up or trying out a new platform, I can often spend 2 hours getting set up just with a command line interface and the organization of it. So, yeah,
Yeah.
it's awesome how quickly it goes. Imaginer isn't cert bot sunsetting as well. What would you recommend instead? So I think To whether it's sunsetting, I think it's a private repo currently that will want to, the Hubs team will
Mhm.
want to publicly make, sorry, open source. That's the correct term. Um, but we'll basically release it, but it will not be maintained after this. So people can continue using it if they would like to. But what I will say is, I think Cert Manager is the uh, one that Alex recommends as part of Helm. But I don't know if that's just Helm that you use that one with.
Just another reminder of either patience or here, for example, I can see that my my DNS is not the same with Firefox and my command line or even Chrome. So if some things don't work out, also try to identify where that comes from. Is it from the DNS? Like I can even connect to a server that I know he's on another even network, and then I can curl on this. And then I can see, okay, here I do have some answer, so I can even ping it. And I do have the right IP address. So that's not the kind of issue you're going to have if you do things slowly, basically. And if you do rush, just make sure that you're not making it worse by insisting and then breaking something while it was actually working, but you did not wait long enough. Here I do though have an error that should not be, because it still tells me that my certificate is not valid. Which is a bit strange. I'm wondering if yeah,
Respawn the pods after removing the HA
yes,
proxy.
yes. I deleted everything, and then they stored it, and then now they're all running.
Okay. One thing to check would be the config map for HA proxy. I forgot exactly what the command is there. How to see config map in.
But what I find a little bit surprising here is that the domain I'm visiting is mymetrics.ovh, and but here the error when I do the certificate viewer with Chromium, it shows me the asset.metrics.ovh, which I would expect it shows me the certificate for the current domain, not the subdomain.
Mhm.
Private window. No, still. So I can't run again CBB because then it's going to not be accessible with this. What I can do think is go back to where I was and then apply it again. Because like I said, maybe again it was trying to apply it a little bit too quickly in terms of the DNS. Because I don't think it, if I go back here, yeah, it didn't find that. That was okay, but normally here, I'm not sure I got a confirmation that it got that certificate. Yeah, and all that is correct. If you're super impatient, little command line trick you can watch on top in front of your command, and then it's going to refresh every 2 seconds, I think, by default. And now, okay, everything is fine. I can try to get the certificates again. I don't know yet if there is. Yeah, for the URL to the documentation. So thanks for putting it in the chat. Overall, when you're when you lost I recommend checking the Hubs Community Edition. So Hubs Cloud as the repository, and then init Community Edition. And I'm pretty sure also if you look at the Sunset blog posts, there are always links to this Community Edition page. And then, so there is mine, which I can't help but recommend. But there are a lot of other ones. So if you're more familiar with other tools, again, like Helm chart or Terraform or other, I really recommend giving a look at them. Mine focuses on OVH, but like I was saying initially, even if you don't like OVH, but you want something with a managed Kubernetes in a sense that it's generic, it doesn't have any, there is nothing OVH specific in there. Michael mentioned like being able to get the scoped kubeconfig. It's still something generic in the sense that there is nothing, no services provided by OVH that make it exclusive to that cloud provider. So if you find another provider local to you or with, I don't know, some specific stance on anything that you prefer over OVH, as long as you get a kubeconfig to use with kubecontrol to manage your cluster and your nodes, I hope at least that everything there in the tutorial would still be valid. Of course, some detail like the name of a cluster in OVH, like Discovery and D28 as the cheap or the entry level kind of node is not going to be the same. But otherwise, I think the principles should be exactly the same. And a little also detail on here, I'm looking at it. I don't know what's blocking. What I can do though. So here I'm going to have to export again, and I think it was, if I remember correctly. this one, just double check. Yeah. So I have the same one. And yes, what I want to do is get the logs on it in the right namespace. Yeah. So some errors. It's actually. So that's it's moving too fast for me, and I don't know if it's related to that one. It happened to me before, and I'm trying to think how I actually solved it. But my main point, and it's the same thing actually, I think that happened in one of the video. It's not ideal in terms of pace for this live stream, but in terms of lesson learn, this, and I mentioned it before, but I didn't really have to, let's say to prove it. I would argue that's the most important comment. Um, if somehow things are too slow, don't behave as you want, if you go on Discord and say, hey, it doesn't work, like I don't think Michael, I, or anybody else can help you. If you say it doesn't work, and the error message I got is error getting validation data from third boat. Well, honestly, I might not be able to help, but at least like it gets to something that
Gives you a much better idea of what's going on.
yes, and maybe even also if you go on the issues here on Hubs Cloud or any other Hubs related project, chances are there might be something with this. I'm just going to try it. Didn't actually try it, so might find nothing. But I found this a rather good habit. Well, actually, an issue by a certain Utopia a month ago, more or less, on exactly that. And a wonderful answer by a certain Michael right after. Um, so I probably went through the steps in the wrong order, but I find again this it's kind of funny, but it does showcase how being able to dig just a bit deeper than oh it doesn't work, but an error message, it doesn't even really matter how cryptic that error message is, as long as you have one, then you can try to backtrack for it. Funnily enough, also it was exactly the same domain. But yes, and there was a certain number of retry. So, but this time though, I'm pretty sure I didn't do the same mistake, did I? Here, it actually accepted for one, I think. One though a little beside the funny aspect of it. If at some point you get too confused, because yeah, maybe I did the steps again in the wrong order, and they can be a little bit rigid, as Michael mentioned in the comment for this issue. Because here we're on a hourly rate. I know it sounds a little bit harsh, and I'm not going to do it right now because actually it still stays installing. Maybe it's also
Interesting.
related to it. Should be this though. But yeah, one way to do this is delete the down cluster. Okay. Now it does say the status is fine, but if you're if it's the first time you're doing it, and at some point, again, at this point, you shouldn't have any data in it, so that should be fine. But at some point, I recommend, and it happened to me, it's like throw the whole thing away, delete the cluster. Yeah, it's a bit rough. I'm not going to get into it now, but delete
I
the
think it would be,
cluster.
yeah, I think it would be very helpful to show how to delete all of those resources, especially for saving costs. But it looks like it's just the clicking the delete button, right?
Yes, I will. So delete button, they ask you to just
Type
ensure you're
terminate.
really, really sure. Terminate, and then it's, well, I mean, I can actually delete the other ones I have. So here I have my other hubs.ovh basically running, the one with the custom client. Can close it, doesn't matter much. And then if you don't want, just double check it's the right one, because I don't want this one to die. Especially if hopefully, fingers crossed, it does work. Even though, honestly, the first time here it took too long, so I'm not even sure it did. But anyway, manage cluster, when you click on it, delete, terminate your cluster, confirm, and then it's basically going to do everything for you. So it's going to delete the cluster and the node pool, and basically that's it. I think if you go also on your billing system from OVH, it's going to give you the detail, like approximately how much you consumed for it. To be honest, I'm not sure if I have private information there, so I can't really show you right now. And if, assuming you did, let's say, like discovery mode, it should be a couple of dozens of euro again for the whole month. So if like now, like I created the first cluster 3 hours ago, like right before this meetup. So this probably cost me, I want to say, €1 or less.
Hmm.
And I insist on this not for the absolute price, but rather in terms of like learning capability. Uh, Starting and destroying cluster like this is basically it's cheap. So if like me you're not familiar with Kubernetes, like start one, delete one, do it again, and then yeah, after doing a couple of time or a dozen of time, it becomes rather I don't want to say second nature, but rather straightforward.
And I
So
also
no.
wanted to note that as I signed up, I think I had to, when I created my project under public cloud, it looks like, yeah, there was a small charge as I actually created the project and the cluster. Sorry, when I created the project and then the clusters inside, I could make as many as I wanted within the project. But I think that was just setup costs for OVH.
So I don't think so. I'm not sure. But what I can say for sure is, since I don't remember, or because I don't remember, then I want to say it's, if it does cost anything, it's going to be at maximum €1. It's going to be super cheap, because I don't
Yes.
think I think projects are pretty much
It was
what's the name?
$1.06. So
Voila,
very,
about
very
in
cheap.
order.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's to get your different. Yeah, again, it's an abstraction. It's like uh,
It
sort things
was
from one place to another. And if you take different regions, like geographical region, I don't think there is more charge. Just you have to wait maybe 5 minutes or 10 minutes to get it running.
sure.
Okay, so I'm going to again delete all the pods to cross my finger that this time it did get the certificate properly. I know it's not going to sound super professional, but I want to argue that if it still doesn't work, it was all done on purpose to perfectly illustrate that if you're going to rush, even if you know what you're doing, it's going to create more problems for no good reason. So make coffee, make tea, get a book or an unrelated documentary that you're going to enjoy, rather than push for the uh, like 1 minute less and 10 minutes of troubles debugging it after. I don't know if there is any, like, for example, OVH specification or setup questions already.
might stop sharing my screen, but which hosting solution are you using for CE? So I think you'll want to look for managed Kubernetes, Jua, but I think you set them up under public cloud as well.
Yes. Yes. Initially, honestly, the naming is like so confusing, and like I said, I've been a client for 10 years more or less, and then every time I go on the interface, I'm like, wait, is it web cloud? Is it public cloud? Is it? Which is also why when I did the demo now, I had OVH pre-open on the right tab, let's say. I mean, not browser tab, but OVH tab, because it's not bare metal cloud. That's usually the server you buy, like a rack. Hosted
Yeah.
private cloud, not even sure what that is. Web cloud, I think it might be DNS. I think I have it open there. Yeah, web cloud is DNS, and hosting plans and email and whatever. Telecom, it's like, uh, what's the name? VoIP, I think.
Hmm.
Sunrise, I don't know, and Marketplace, I don't know. So yeah, it's the naming I
Sometimes
don't like, but
sometimes it's hard to
public.
tell what's technical naming and what's brand naming. And technical naming, very small differences have big impacts. It's important to know the difference between very similar sounding terms, but with branding, it's kind of all this different names for the same thing.
Yeah, yeah. So fingers crossed. Oh, that doesn't look good. Did I comment it? I think so. My. Yes, it is commented. Hmm. Well, it's a good thing that I started with a running instance before showing you this one. It did work until the certificates. So everything is running. I have everything ready, but somehow I can't access it. Um,
Are there any errors in your browser console? Oh, sorry. Are there any errors in your browser console that might give a clue as to which part is failing?
I couldn't hear anything.
Oh, sorry. Am I better now?
Yeah, much better.
Okay. So I was just wondering if there are any errors in your browser console that on the loading page that
Ah,
might give a clue.
so I tried also to use just curl, and I don't get anything
Okay.
anymore. So I don't. It's earlier than that.
It's a black hole. It sucks everything in and lets nothing escape.
Yes. So I can go back again to because I can apply this again. So trying to basically go back to the initial state. I'll stay here actually, because I think for the sound, otherwise it's too tricky for me to hear. Okay, so. So yes, I'm going to try to again generate the certificates. I'm going to go back also to the issue that we discussed a while ago, because yeah, I think that's what I have done. Let's try one last time. So now, just making sure together, I guess here it's not commented, so it means I can run the script that's going to try to apply it for the domain and the 3 subdomains. I think also right now I should be able to access it, by the way. It's going to be insecure, but that should work. But I don't. That's not normal, is it? Okay, no, it is. Maybe my curl has a problem. Okay, so I do have, I'm back to the uncertified version, which is good. Trying to get the certificates again. And I shouldn't have, because I want to monitor live what's happening here. Good cert. So that's should be fine. Now that was just one dot, whereas last time it was like a long time. So that's better sign. I don't know if in, well, in the meantime, something I want to maybe bring good luck to, to the certification process while doing that is I want to invite people. I mean, I know this is, let's say, a technical part of the documentation, but I want to, let's say, take the opportunity to mention the more social and political aspect, basically, which is also the little bit the last part of my documentation where I invite people to get organized, basically. So I'm going to show it since I've written it, but if I, after the certification, after the custom client, I have a little part on synchronization for cooperation, because basically, yeah, hubs is up to us. And if we want hubs in whatever form it is to survive, then we need to get organized, and it has to be, in my opinion, for good, basically, that it shouldn't be just a technical project. And I think that means voicing your perspective or your view on what hubs must be. And I think it's quite important, because if you don't voice your opinion, if you don't also are ready to put some resource in, meaning time or money or expertise or all that and more, then whatever is going to happen is still going to happen, but without your, let's say, voice or your attempt to shift in a way that I hope is positive. So I know it's not the most ideal situation now, the sunset, but I want to believe that it's hopefully for the better. I think maybe through self-governance, through hubs as a community, beyond Mozilla, then it can be an even better version of hubs. But yeah, it's not going to happen without us, basically. So
Yeah, I'll second that. And if anyone wants to get in on the self-organization, a lot of
mhm.
us are talking about that in the Join Forces channel, and there is a separate Discord we have set up that is linked in that Join Forces channel for people to talk about these specific issues. Um, there are a couple of different groups or teams that we've put together to uh, solve specific issues that we see going forward. So anyone and everyone is welcome to get in on all of that and um, help hubs move forward with whatever future it has.
Yes, indeed. And yeah, it's our future, Hub's future, all intertwined. And I think maybe as a good omen,
Sir Bot has gone through.
yes.
Yay!
Which
Hooray.
honestly, it's
Congratulations.
kind of frustrating because I didn't change anything. I just repeated the process. But it illustrates perfectly the don't rush. It's going to work. Take your time. Repeat the steps. Learn the logs, or at least how to get the logs, and get involved also. So that was a good way to put that part in. But it works.
Yeah.
I'm going to suggest then only join if it doesn't make a mess in terms of your what's the name, connection or whatnot. But if yeah, I'm going to put the link in the chat. If you can open that in either another browser or make sure basically you don't leave the current meeting is my point. But then yeah, you can join to kind of prove it's real. And also we can see if with the cheapest of the server, if we're more than 2 or 3, it's going to make the whole thing explode. So I see a couple of people that joined. Super. So it's the super
This
minimalist,
is
like I said. I
Michael.
didn't put any assets.
This is Michael talking to you through the mymatrix.ovh server. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
I can't hear you, Fabien, I don't think, but
Yes,
uh,
we can hear.
oh, wonderful. I've muted my the original meeting tab and I'm just talking in the mymatrix OVH server. Gotcha. I see you're keeping the audio. But we have audio going. Dialogue is working. That's fantastic.
Hello, hello.
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 Beautiful.
Let the box gathering commence.
Let let the boxes gather. Okay, I'm gonna go back to the other the other server if that's okay.
I feel better. Honestly, I was starting to think, oh, this is not going to work.
It worked out. Well done, Fabien. Thank you for guiding us through all of that.
Yes.
My pleasure. I just want to say, like, yeah, the next steps from there, yeah, you can go on the admin panel, adding all the avatars, the scene. I mean, it is important. Otherwise, yeah, you look like basically floating cubes. So for some people, it's nice aesthetics. From others, I mean, for most, it's not enough. The one thing that is important, like I said before, getting involved, but then it's also saving your data. You want at some point to be able to say, because stuff happens, your maybe even your cluster gets deleted, you misclick or whatnot. So find a way to save your data. And I want to, let's say, promise that us as a community, we're going to find a way to do this properly relatively soon. So that's kind of also one when I see people on Discord like, oh, hub sunset, etc. Like, yes, and now is the time to learn how to self-host. Now is the time to learn how to customize it so that not only you self-host, but you make something like a unique experience, basically. And then that your data, basically, because you understand how it works, is going to be safe. But I think, yeah, we're a long way already, and I think it's pretty empowering and encouraging.
Yeah. Now, is this, like you mentioned saving, is this persistent data, or like if you undeploy and redeploy the pods, will everything disappear?
I think it's safe to assume everything disappears. It's
So
yeah.
how would you set that up on OVH? I think with AWS you need persistent volume added.
Yes,
to it.
yes, and you can do
So,
that with OVH too. You also have persistent volumes there.
oh, okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
and
So same terminology.
unfortunately, sorry, go on.
Uh, just so it's the same terminology. That's good.
Yes, no, it's exactly the same.
Persistent volumes are something that is a Kubernetes paradigm. So it's not, um, honestly,
Oh, okay.
I don't know if it's a Kubernetes paradigm or like just a virtual machine paradigm. But I know it's the same across wherever you're hosting. And I've seen, I know Rithik has gotten them set up, Ivan has gotten them set up. A lot of people have done it in some way. I definitely want to kind of show how the Hubs team would recommend doing it, but a lot of the community has already found ways of getting persistent volumes working.
Yay. Excellent.
Yeah, and I want to say I did not manage, but I'm pretty sure that if you follow documentation or tutorials for people who did manage on Google Cloud or AWS through persistent volume, you can apply that to OVH.
Okay. Good.
I think that the way that I have done with persistent volumes, that can be used with OVH, uh, because it's through the YML file and it doesn't use anything external. Like, you don't have to set up anything external on the dashboard. Uh, and also, like with the tutorial that you showed, I find it that OVH is a lot similar to DigitalOcean, because you don't have to add so much security groups and all those stuffs. You can directly focus on your main task. Okay.
Also, Joa in the chat. So persistent volume, it's because no. So if you use the example that I've given on OVH as is today, you can have events and just like we briefly meet in the room, and that should be fine. But for example, if one of the machine dies and restarts part of it or some of it, with maybe the hubs team push an image and then your pods are auto updating, which I think is the default configuration, it might restart it. And if that specific image is the one that were to hold your data, like for example, how many people registered or the custom avatars and whatnot, then you would probably lose the data there. So again, in that current state, if you want to do an event right now and it lasts 1 hour, I assume it's pretty safe. It probably still is safe even in the longer run, but overall, I would advise to consider this kind of setup without persistent volume as a prototyping environment. It's not something, let's say, I would feel comfortable for 6-month hosting of professional events with, like, I don't know, PDF that you share week over week. I don't think that's foolproof enough, let's say, for this kind of context.
Yes, I would say that Utopia, that's right, that we shouldn't need, like, persistent volume is not really needed for servers which you don't intend to shut down. Like, if you are intending to scale down the server, ask it, update it, scale up, scale down, if you are going to play in and out there, and if due to these things your data is at risk, then persistent volume is something that could help. But again, with the steps that I did, and with the way that I did, it didn't really, uh, like, it only worked on one node group rather than every single node. So more of, like, you can imagine that your right now you are on your Chrome browser and you're running hubs.mozilla.com and your community meetup room. As soon as you close the browser and you restart the browser, you will have to load the scene again. Like, your scene, your JavaScript and everything, all the code has to load again if you close the browser and restart it. But with persistent volumes, it is like your scene, your local storage and everything is kind of cached somewhere. And so when you load it, you will only need to be connected to internet, but your scene and your JavaScript, CSS, all those things will already be there. Yes, imagine that. That's what I also believe it to be. More of like a disk, ROM. It's called ROM mostly.
And
Yep.
I want to, like, let's say, make a bet. I want to bet that that's a 1 week to 1 month problem. I don't think it's going to remain a problem longer than this. So if you have if you need safe, persistent solution right now, like literally today, that's going to be problematic. But if you want to learn how to set up hubs, if you want to learn how to customize it, if you want to get involved in the discussion about self-governance, I'm rather convinced, and it may be me being optimistic or naive, but based on the similarity of the different setup, the people involved, and the knowledge in terms of deployment and development, I want to say it's an easy problem to solve. For example, I think the different repository and license, all this is going to be trickier than this technical problem. It sounds scary, like you don't have persistence, or it's might not last long. But my understanding of it is it's an easier problem than others. So I'm rather confident. Couple of weeks at most on OVH and other cloud provider, persistent is not going to be a problem.
Fabien, before we're out of time, how can people who are using your tutorial give you feedback or connect with you if they have questions?
So if you're in Brussels, let's have a beer or a coffee.
Nice.
I would be delighted. Otherwise, on Discord, I think right now is the most practical. There were the official Discord, and then there is another Discord called the V Formation Village. It's the same way that OVH. Like, I don't want to advertise the other Discord as better or anything. It just exists, and there are people there in case, for example, the Hubs Discord is not available. I'm on both, basically. And otherwise, there is my email, the one I shared also in the tutorial a couple of times. Send me an email. Honestly, I'd rather it being Discord again, because yeah, people other than me that are more knowledgeable on other topic can help. So don't hesitate. I mean, remain polite, of course. If you say something that's not constructive, maybe skip it. But otherwise, if you see any typo, if you have suggestion, also, for example, on persistence, on using not OVH but another managed Kubernetes that might work, or if you have a way that is more generic or efficient, please share on Discord, if need be via email. I'm on other social networks, but right now my advice is more than on the Discord. One quick word also at the very end of the tutorial. I mentioned, so there is the French version, but there is also, I added a point on immer space, which is basically about adding federation to social XR, or actually to any kind of web-based social platform. I mention it now because in the same way that self-governance is now important, I think federation can help. It is quote unquote just a technical solution, so it's still about us, people behind it, to make it work. But I think federation, so that if you set up a server with community edition on OVH or AWS or your own home server or whatever you want, really, then if you want to connect with other people, then we can federate. We can show something as big and beautiful and rich as Hubs was before, but in a federated way. And I think it is, I want to highlight it in the sense that I think it's important. It shows like how alive it can be, because sometimes people see, a small server with a couple of people, and I don't think that's a bad thing. I think a lot of small servers with a lot of people that have their own community can be really powerful, and I think federation can also be resilient. So again, it's not necessarily about that technical solution per se, it's rather that it exists. So it is a potential way to keep on connecting with each other if we want to, beyond a single server. So I think it's interesting, if not important, to explore.
Wonderful. Well, Fabien, thank you again for your time today and for all of the hard work you did to get the tutorial ready for us. It's just so amazing to see such great participation, and I know you're available to keep working and refining, and I think the community is really already benefiting from your documents and will continue to do so.
Well, thanks a lot for the trust. Thanks for everyone also for joining today. Avec grand plaisir. And if you have also a question in French or want to do clarification in French, happy to do that too. And thanks a lot.
Alrighty. I'm going to stop recording.